Pushkin. Hey, it's Jake. Before we get into this episode, I want to let you know that you can now binge the entire season, ad-free, by becoming a Pushkin Plus subscriber. You can hear all 6 episodes before they're released to the public. Sign up for Pushkin Plus on the Deep Cover Apple Podcast show page, or visit pushkin.fm/plus. Your subscription also unlocks more early and ad-free content from other true crime shows coming later this year, like new seasons of Death of an Artist and Lost Hills, and a brand new true investigation called Where's Dia? Now, onto the episode. Previously on Deep Cover.
So he starts telling us how it went down. That basically, that he and Tommy decided one night to go and find a black man, to kill that black man so that they could get their spiderweb tattoos as skinheads.
How optimistic were you that you were going to be able to get them what they needed to solve this?
I was actually very optimistic because we keep pretty good records on our dead bodies.
We have a name. We have a victim.
Last November, I traveled to Philadelphia to meet some of Ron Wood's relatives.
Hello, my name is Michelle Wood, and Ron Wood is my uncle.
It struck me right away that Michelle used the present tense. Ron is her uncle, as if, on some level, he's still alive for her. And he kind of is. He still looms in her memories, even though Michelle was just 3 years old back in 1989 when he was murdered.
I always get this vision, but I don't know if it was like me just thinking about what happened or if I actually remembered. But I always have this vision of my grandmom's living room and everybody like in a circle hugging each other and crying.
For Michelle, this vision, this memory, is from the time that her uncle died, when they all gathered at her grandmother's house in North Philadelphia to mourn. And you heard her say she can't even be sure if it's a real memory or something that she's just been told about so many times that it has slowly leached into her consciousness and become a memory. That vision of her family was something that she recalled and felt every time she walked into her grandmother's living room. Growing up, Michelle says she was very close with her grandmother, Dorothy Wood, Ron's mother. Michelle often wanted to ask her grandmother to talk about the past, to share some stories about her uncle Ron. But Michelle didn't ask, 'cause she'd been warned not to.
My dad will always say, like, if you have any questions about your uncle, ask me, don't really try to talk to your grandma about it. So I would just listen when someone said something, but I didn't ask because I just felt like it was like a sore topic.
Occasionally, Dorothy would talk about Ron. Michelle says back then, even as a child, she could sense her grandmother's pain. And she also sensed that her grandmother was trying to make sense of what had happened, of why Ron had been killed, because no one had ever been able to offer the family any explanation, not the police or the neighbors or even Ron's friends. And the not knowing seemed to eat away at Dorothy.
I think that when it comes to certain particular deaths, I think that sometimes we put on the front with the world like we've gotten over it because maybe people feel like they might be tired of hearing about it or it's been so long, you should be over it.
Michelle remembers that her grandmother often recalled things that Ron said before he died. Apparently, there were certain Bible verses that Ron liked to paraphrase, like when Jesus said, "Put your sword back into its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword." Dorothy wondered aloud, why had Ron quoted this particular verse? What was he trying to tell us? Dorothy puzzled over this and other things that Ron said, as if these memories or these cryptic bits somehow held the secret to her son's fate.
I think she was trying to get answers. I feel like she was, still heartbroken about it.
In some ways, Michelle was also looking for answers. She too wanted to know more about her uncle Iran. But there was, perhaps quite understandably, a sense among some family members that the past was the past. It was painful, so best to let it be, best to move on. For Dorothy, this brokenheartedness, this yearning for an answer, it continued for a very long time. But there was no movement, no news, nothing. It seemed possible she'd never know who murdered her son or why. But then, 17 years later, in 2006, the Philly PD showed up at her house and knocked on her door. These cops were acting on intel from Scott and Terry's investigation. This door knock, it would set off a chain of events that would upend the Wood family and its understanding of the past. And it would instill in the family another yearning entirely, a yearning for justice. I'm Jake Halpern, and this is Deep Cover Season 4, The Nameless Man. Episode 3, The Yearning. When I started working on this story, one of the first things I did was reach out to the Wood family. I wrote letters, emails, sent a few texts. Initially, I got no response. And then, finally, I heard back from Michelle. Right away, she became my ambassador to the Wood family. She told me that I really needed to speak with her father and her uncle, Iran's brothers. They were in their 20s when Iran died. Michelle suggested that I come down to Philadelphia and that we all get together. The Wood family had never really spoken publicly about Iran's death, not in any depth or detail anyhow. So I was surprised by this invitation, but I can't take any credit for it. It was all Michelle. She made it happen. And I got the sense it wasn't even that she wanted to speak so much as she wanted to listen, to hear what her dad and her uncle had to say. All these years later, Michelle still yearned to know more about her own family and her uncle Iran, the man who'd been murdered under mysterious circumstances when she was just 3 years old. We all met up in an apartment that I rented in the Fairmount neighborhood of Philly. It was me, my producer Amy, and 3 members of the Wood family: Michelle, her dad Michael, and her uncle Tyrone. The 5 of us crammed into a tiny shoebox of a living room. I mean, the chairs were jammed in so tight, our feet were practically touching. Dorothy passed away a few years ago, so sadly, she wasn't there.
Are we rolling on both? Okay, so let's talk about names. We're going to pause for a second. Talk about names.
Names. Because the first thing you got to know about the Wood family is everyone has a nickname. Tyrone, he's the youngest child, the baby. He was almost 8 years younger than Iran. His nickname is the Golden Child because, as a kid, he got away with everything.
But was that, Tyrone, was that like a name that you embraced, or were you like...
Oh, I embraced it. Because I knew it was true.
And then there's Michael, the middle child. He's Michelle's dad. He was 6 years younger than Iran. And he has a nickname too.
The disco era from the 70s, like that. Because when I started DJing in 82, that was still the disco era was still coming. So that's why a lot of people, some people I grew up with, they know me as, they'll call me DJ Mike, they'll call me Disco Mike.
It's a real 80s feeling. Disco.
Yeah. And disco.
It was clear to me from the start, just a few minutes into our conversation, that this is a family that likes to laugh. They told me they've always enjoyed each other's company. Tyrone, the golden child, remembers Thanksgivings when he would cook dinner and then cuddle up with his niece on the couch, where he'd fall asleep instantly.
Yes.
On the couch.
Knocked out.
We had a football game on, plus I cooked and
Eagles losing, of course.
Nah, not all the time. Not all the time. We ain't gonna talk about that, okay? Okay.
That's how I was at my grandma's house too.
Yeah.
Her couch. Always fell asleep on her couch.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that was a sleeping pill. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Wow. You guys, it sounds like you guys have a close family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At this point, there was a pause in our conversation. No one spoke for a moment. You could almost feel a muted sadness creep into the room, like cold air through a crack in the wall. And then, totally unprompted, Michelle said,
I often wonder how it would have been if my uncle was still up. Getting to know him more.
Where does that thought lead you when you go down that road?
I guess now I feel like this would be a good time to start, bridging the gaps and stuff with our family.
Bridging the gaps. Michelle was referring to other relatives in the family who knew Iran that they'd lost touch with. But as I saw it, there seemed to be other gaps too. Gaps in memory. Things that Michelle couldn't remember or never knew about her uncle Iran. And that's really why we were here, to talk about the one brother who was absent. Iran, of course, had a nickname of his own, Cat. Apparently, it came from the animated cartoon, Top Cat. It was popular back in the 60s.
Top Cat!
Top Cat was the leader of a gang of alley cats from Manhattan who were always hustling with get-rich-quick schemes. Their plans usually backfired, comically so. Iran was a big fan of the show, and apparently, he was also a smooth operator.
Oh yeah, he's a smooth dude. I mean, he, like I said, he wasn't the biggest guy, but everybody respected him. I mean, they listened to him. Cat said this, Cat said that.
And he loved cats too.
Yeah.
He loved cats. I remember, it's funny, right? Because I remember when he would kiss the cats, he would kiss them in their mouth. And my mom would say, tell his girlfriend, I don't know why you kissing him around. He'd be kissing them cats in the mouth.
Yeah.
In the neighborhood, Iran seemed to embrace the role of Top Cat, a little guy with a lot of bluster. He was a good basketball player, and a ladies' man too, a real sharp dresser. In fact, as he got older and could afford it, Iran had his clothing custom made by a local tailor. Iran very much played the role of the big brother, looking out for his siblings, keeping them safe. When Michael or Tyrone played basketball or hung out at the park, they never had to worry about people messing with them. Everyone knew they were Cat's younger brothers. And according to Tyrone, this allowed them to remain just kids much longer than they otherwise would have. Even though there was crime in their neighborhood, the Woods house never got burglarized. This was Iran's doing, the brothers told me. This was his reputation, keeping them safe, like a shield, or so it seemed. In the late 70s and early 80s, when the Wood brothers were coming of age, Philadelphia was grappling with an uptick in homicides. And at times, the threat of danger felt very real to the Wood family. There was one occasion when Iran was in his 20s. Iran was at the park, someone shot off a gun, and the bullet grazed Iran's body. He had to go to the hospital to get patched up. It was a close call, and a reminder that no one was entirely safe. The brothers say that Iran was the type of young man who was always testing boundaries, pushing it a little bit, which sometimes caused tension with their mom, Dorothy. Even so, Iran helped out. Whatever money he made, he always shared it with their mom. Here's Michael.
I know he would give him money, whatever various jobs or whatever he did out in the street or like that. He wasn't no choir boy, because he was involved in different things. He was, I know he was in this, selling drugs and stuff like that.
Michael and Tyrone didn't know all the details, but they understood. Their older brother was, quote, no choir boy. By the time that he was in his late 20s, Iran ran a local speakeasy, and he also sold drugs. But to his brothers, he was Top Cat, the lovable rascal who was always there for them. When it came time for Disco Mike to go to the prom, it was Iran who took him to get a snazzy suit at a men's shop called Today's Man. Later, when Michael wanted to find work as a DJ, Iran had him spin records at his speakeasy. Tyrone, the youngest, the golden child, remembers fondly being in his 20s and going to Cat's speakeasy when Disco Mike would spin his records.
He would DJ and my brother would, run the place. And, at the end of the night, we would go upstairs. He'd count the money or whatever, give Michael whatever. And that was like a really fun time for me.
Yeah, it was.
Because it was a time I got to spend time with both my brothers at the same time with no drama or nothing wrong. It was just a happy time.
Tyrone smiled when he told this story. You could see him doing that thing where, for a moment, you kind of step away from yourself and go back in time. It was sweet to watch, but also painful, because I knew what came next. We're going to take a quick break. There are single moments in time when fate takes a jagged turn, like a dogleg intersection that dumps you into a dead end. For the Wood family, this moment occurred in April of 1989. The Wood brothers were adults. They had families of their own. Iran was 33, Michael was 28, and Tyrone, the baby, the golden child, was 26. It was Tyrone who got the call from their mother, telling him that something terrible had happened. Their oldest brother had been shot in the head and left for dead. The police didn't have a shooter. They didn't seem to have any leads either. Tyrone and Michael were at a loss. Sure, maybe Iran was no choir boy, but as far as they knew, he didn't have any enemies either. As Tyrone recalled,
everybody liked him. That's why we was baffled. Like, oh, somebody shot Iran. Shot Iran? You cat? Nah, no way. And I guess that's what puzzled us the most in the beginning. Couldn't figure it out.
Still in a state of shock, the brothers rushed over to be with their mom.
How did your mom, what state was your mom in at that point?
I know she was really out of it. She was really distraught. She was really distraught. She was in kind of a bad way. So we tried to just be there for her. I don't know. What can we say? That's her oldest son, I didn't know how to react, especially to a violent crime like that. I was kind of mad at God. I was like, how can you do this to me? I was thinking, well, what are we going to do now? That sort of thing. How do we go on? And then, because, that was the first real violence in my life. Mm-hmm. And that, at that time, it took me, I went to a tailspin. I wasn't myself, because I was just in self-destruct mode, I guess. Day before his funeral, I disappeared. I was drinking and as a matter of fact, I came to my mother's house the day before the funeral in the middle of the night, and they made me go upstairs and go to bed.
They took away his keys. They didn't want him driving. They just wanted to keep him safe. A few days later, Tyrone went to the spot where his brother was killed, on the 1300 block of Stillman Street.
I actually want to see where it happened. We went to the last place he was at. I just want to see the last place he was at, basically.
Did it give you any peace or anything?
No. I wept a lot. I don't even know who was with me. I don't know if I was by myself. I don't know. I just know I drove there. And I just cried and just, I was like, but I had to see. I had to see the last place my brother was on earth.
Meanwhile, Michael, the middle brother, he was also struggling. The night before the service, he went to the funeral home to see his brother in a coffin. And in this quiet moment, he kissed Iran on the forehead. What Michael remembers next is the wake. Everyone gathered at their mom's house to grieve and pay their respects. Michael was still grasping for answers. There was still no new information on who murdered Iran, just rumors, speculation about who might have a motive. But it was all chatter. At some point, Michael recalls one of his aunts sat him down because there was something important that she wanted to tell him.
She said, you have to forgive the person that killed your brother. And I don't even know who this person is. I know he's somewhere around. I don't know. It could be somebody that came in the lounge where I worked at, DJing and stuff like that. I don't even know who this person is because it was like all kinds of rumors. Or I think so-and-so did it. Well, he had an incident with this person. He had an incident with that person, So we don't even know who the enemy is.
Michael had no idea who had killed his brother. None at all. But his aunt was insistent that he needed to embrace the Lord's Prayer, one verse especially.
Where it says, particularly in the Lord's Prayer, that in order for God to forgive you for your sins, you have to forgive your enemies, something like that.
But this raises a question of how do you forgive someone that you don't even know who that person is?
You don't know because you don't. I mean, it's hard. It's hard. I'm told this, and did I forgive that person at the time? My aunt is telling me this, and it's in my mind, but I don't think, be honest with you, I don't think right then and there I'm not forgiving that person.
And how could he? How can you forgive a person you don't know? Someone you can't picture? Someone who has no face and no name? And this underscores a central irony and tragedy of this entire story. For the investigators who were trying to solve this case, the federal agents, their nameless man was the victim. Until they found him, they had nothing, no case and no closure. But for the Woods, their nameless man was the perpetrator, the murderer. And until they found out who he was, there could be no forgiveness, nor any peace either. In the aftermath of Iran's death, everyone in the Wood family struggled in their own way. Tyrone, the youngest, the golden child, struggled with alcoholism.
I basically lost a lot. My first marriage, I lost that. So I had to basically just build myself back up again.
Tyrone went to rehab, got sober, and leaned into his faith.
I started reading the book again. And that's basically what got me back on track. I realized that what am I gaining by being mad at God? I mean, it wasn't God that pulled the trigger.
Tyrone says it's not like he found all the answers. He still struggled with the how and why of his brother's death. Both brothers, Tyrone and Michael, did everything they could to be there for their mom.
We all just made sure that she didn't feel like she was alone. So we never let her be. And I think in time, I can't say she completely got over it, but she kind of, being as how she was a Christian, she kind of accepted it and for what it was, and she just gravitated towards us.
She kind of accepted it, Tyrone said. I was reminded of what Michelle had said from the beginning about her grandmother. How sometimes it seemed like she put up a front to the whole world, like she'd moved on, because that's what people wanted her to do. But within the immediate family, they all kind of knew that Dorothy still agonized over her son's death, in part because she blamed herself for not doing more to keep Iran safe. Here's Michael, the middle brother, again.
I remember she was always saying that I wish I could have really talked to him or try to spend more time with him or try to reach him. She kind of felt that she failed as a mother as far as him.
Tyrone, the youngest, remembers this too, how their mom kept blaming herself.
She wished she could have did things a little different, but you can't. You can't. And I told her all the time, I said, you can't say that because you did the best you could with what you have. Like I told her, you didn't slack on him. You did the best you could under the circumstances. And then you raised 3 boys. 3 men. You've made 3 boys into men. That's not easy. Mm-hmm. So I said, you the best mom.
Even so, the question remained, who was responsible for her son's death? In truth, they all still wondered about Iran and what had happened. Late at night, Tyrone found himself at home on the couch watching true crime TV shows.
I used to watch the Unsolved Mystery shows, and I often thought about calling because I was like, this is not right. How can a person get killed and no one knows anything?
It wasn't until one day in 2006, nearly 2 decades after Iran's death, that the family thought they might finally learn the truth.
A police officer came to my mother's house. He said that we have a new lead about what happened with your son in 1989. And, she don't open the door for anybody. So she automatically just told him, she said, look, give me your card. My son is going to call you. So she's talking about me because she said she wasn't able to deal with it.
Tyrone told his mother not to worry about it. He would call the detectives.
So I'm kind of nervous, and then I just called. The detective said, we're still investigating, but we think we found out who killed your brother.
And at first, that's really all the police tell the Wood family. But it was enough to kindle some hope, to make them believe that maybe, after all these years of guessing and speculation, that they might finally learn what happened to Iran.
We didn't like the speculation. The family and I thought that this would be good if we found at least what happened to him. Can't do nothing about it, can't bring him back, but at least we'll find out the truth. And the truth will probably help everybody in the family.
That was the hope, that the truth would help them, heal them, bring them some closure. But it would be many, many months before they would learn the full extent of what the authorities had pieced together. And during this time, Scott Duffy and Terry Mortimer, along with the Philly PD, they were hard at work, scrambling to gather evidence, with the hope that they might build a strong enough case to make an arrest and go to trial. Next time on Deep Cover.
It was definitely a different type of case. A skinhead coming to Philadelphia to kill somebody? A cowardly act.
We say to Craig, you were there, we weren't. Perhaps you blocked it out. Let's just drive and unblock your mind.
So we're like, police, get down. And I'm yelling, others are yelling at the top of our lungs. And he just stands there like a deer in the headlights, just staring at me, staring at them. And I could see in his mind, I could see in his face, he's deciding what to do.
Deep Cover is produced by Amy Gaines McQuaid and Jacob Smith. It's edited by Karen Shakurji. Mastering by Jake Gorski. Our show art was designed by Sean Carney. Original scoring and our theme was composed by Luis Guerra. Fact-checking by Arthur Gompertz. Our story consultant was James Foreman Jr. Special thanks to Jerry Williams, Sarah Nix, Greta Cohn, and Jake Flanagan. I'm Jake Halpern.